Hey, Jean, how are you?
Hi, this is really fun. Thanks for having me.
We're glad too. I'm really excited about this Ask the Expert session together with you. So let's get the party started.
Well, like Mark Twain always said, an expert is just another guy from a different town. So, and you and I come from Virginia, so we're good.
Exactly, born in Virginia. Um, Before we get into it, just want to let the audience know what they can expect with our session today. So we picked with Jean three themes that we find pertinent regarding how to set up and have an EA program that takes off. And when we're talking about these, we want to talk about some key success factors that make that be the case, some of which may be underutilized, lesser known. So we hope you can get some cool takeaways. And we also wanted to mention that 20 minutes is super short to talk about all the things we want to say. So the
I know.
conversation does continue. Jean and I would love to keep talking with you about this. And so don't hesitate, please reach out. Okay. So to get started, let's kick off with a poll. Audience, how do you perceive that your EA practice, your EA in your organization is currently perceived? Are you maybe right now not heard, not recognized, value not yet perceived? Or perhaps you're already visible. You're in a push mode, but you are considered as useful. Or do you consider that you're known and trusted, and even those in the organization coming to you for your expertise, for your data? Gives you guys just a little bit of time to answer. Okay, let's go see about the results in the poll. Wow, we got a predominant amount of the audience that's indicating that you exist for the organization. You've been seen. You've been able to demonstrate that you're useful. So bravo for that. That's already a pretty great feat. But that you still considering that you're having to be proactive and pushing out to the organization and less so than coming to you. Very interesting. So our first theme that we chose with Jean is to talk about value of enterprise architecture. Because if we say we want to have an enterprise architecture practice that generates a lot of value, let's first talk about what is the value, and then what are the factors that let that value come to be. So the two key elements that we've identified as a focus were, and not in the right order, because why not? You're going to have value because you're replying to the challenges and the opportunities of your organization, not just doing EA to do EA, but that your purpose that you've defined for your EA reflects the purpose and the reason to be and the strategy that your organization has defined. Because if you're not aligned to that and showing that alignment, making that connection, and that your internal audience has not seen that you made that connection, you're not going to get the traction you're looking for and the recognition that you need, and in fact won't bring the results that you're hoping to achieve. And the second piece is that to really take off, you need to be able to have this EA value proposition understood and recognized by management and by your user base. Jean, what do you, we've talked earlier before this session about communicating on the mandate. Tell us more about why you consider this to be underutilized or lesser known as the key success factor, and what does that look like communicating on the mandate, and how does that help us demonstrate the EA value, in your opinion?
So when I first started out in EA, like 2007 is when I stood up my first EA organization. And back then it was all about marketing EA, talking about it. And as I progressed through the career and, stood up more and more EA, it was like, yeah, you do have to market. You have to market everything in IT to get visibility. But one of the things I've always found is that your enterprise architecture, the difficulty of EA, in my opinion, is not developing the program, right? But determining how to use it. And then once you use it, understanding out who are the stakeholders, determining why you're there, building and evolving it. And at Freddie Mac, for an example, I had a marketing person. We had so many stakeholders. We were like, okay, I need somebody with a marketing background who could communicate, identify who the stakeholders were, how do they want to be spoken to, how do they want reports, do they want weekly telecoms, do they want presentations, understanding, that's part of really understanding why a VA and who your audience is. So I think it's really an unknown success factor is to create that communication plan almost as part of your service catalog, identifying, okay, here are our services, here's our engagement model, and then staying in touch with those stakeholders. A couple other tricks I've used is I used to print out business cards for my architects, and on the back of their business card was a very simple vision mission statement of this is what we do, and so if they saw somebody in the elevator, they had their elevator speech, or if they were talking to somebody, whether it was a programmer or a dev lead or someone in ops, they had a you kept the message consistent. Yeah. And you kept your stakeholders informed the way they needed to be informed.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said here because you hit on three key pieces. One is when you said you were leaning out to someone that was an expert in marketing. You're just reminding everyone that EA that brings value is not EA with a couple of experts in a room with the door closed. It's an EA that knows how to reach out to those who have the right skills, the right knowledge, and to involve them. And it's not just about delegating. It's just that's how knowing where the strengths that different people and departments have, and the more that we're in this collaborative approach, I think the more qualitative the results are going to be. That was the point one I really like that you said. Point two is when you're talking about when you're just talking with the different stakeholders, that you're adapting to vocabulary that works for them, speaking their language. Not just deciding when I'm going to give a given message, but what message fits for each party. Sometimes enterprise architecture can kind of give a reaction to be scary. What in the world is that? It sounds really technical. It sounds really complicated. Well, orienting it towards putting yourself in the shoes of the party on the other side, the role on the other side. What are they getting from it as far as outcomes? And what involvement we're expecting from them. So the more they're directly involved in seeing what they're getting from it, the more likelihood that it's going to take off. So
when you have your engagement model, you can literally, do a mind find and find out in your engagement model, whether it's starting with the CIO and the C-suite, what's your engagement with them? What's your engagement models are important. How do you engage with the PMO? How do you engage with business architecture? Having those engagement points and understanding that's part of your relationship and the expertise that you need and require as feedback into your EA program.
And the other aspect of it, I mentioned three earlier that I heard you touch on, that is key is that you're not just thinking about what you can throw out there, but how is this information going to be used? And it be represented in a way. So you mentioned reports, dashboards, okay, it might even be leveraging the intranet portal of the company that has a nice big visibility, but you're not going to talk in the same way and show the same things. Try to use visual representations. So what's really cool is nowadays we have a lot of capacities for data visualization and reporting. So that does ease the accessibility of what you're trying to demonstrate. So for me, when we talk about demonstrating value with EA, it's first we actually have to generate value. So that's kind of the starting point. You can't demonstrate something you didn't do. And the second is the way you're communicating on it, the timing, the vocabulary, outcomes to the right publics.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look down here in the chat if maybe we've had any questions that have come in on this theme so far, or maybe not. This is pure live, people. So here goes my eyes reading in the chat questions. Did you guys also see anything going on there? Okay. They're all enjoying talking to Katie, which is fascinating. Enjoy.
Oh, that's
Continue.
great.
Seems to be that after each session, people are talking about the previous session, which is fine. Okay, so there is a question from the audience that says, Jean, isn't this part of the stakeholder management to plan communication of EA into the enterprise? What is the difference in your communication?
There's the communication plan that is part of your program, right? But there's also, which is who do you communicate, how do you communicate, and when do you communicate? But there's also the day-to-day, what I call, actually before COVID, you had hall room chats or, an elevator speech or whatever. And that's where I think it's really important to have everybody in your EA program should really understand what your mission vision is, and especially who are you, what do you do, how do you do it, and put it in layman's terms, simple as possible. And that's why I created the business cards for people. It's like kind of quick reminders. I just think it's very, very important to be able to speak. If you say business capability, then be able to say this is what a business capability is. If you're good at terms that may be different for your stakeholders, then you have to be able to describe those, right? To communicate those, and then touch on that that value, especially if you're in a project. You want to identify, okay, I do this part in this project, and this is the value I'm bringing. So it is kind of doing self-marketing at all times, which is probably a leftover from, years gone by. But I just think it's really important to use multiple types of communication channels. Like you said, most companies have an EA website internally, and they can get the basics there. They can get the service catalog. How do we get to the tools? That's that. But I think as a team, you still have to keep that fresh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I also see another question about common challenges and pitfalls when implementing an EA architecture strategy and how best we can address them. That's a big question. There's a lot of things we can say about that.
That is. So when I first started out, enterprise architecture was basically a strategic tool, right? It came with a mission, a vision, methods, taxonomy, some tools. It was basically an approach to accelerate, the capabilities of the organization to achieve objectives. Now I have seen EA evolve, and it still does asset management. I'm not saying that hasn't gone away, but it's now becoming more kind of like Luca was saying, it's more mission critical. We're being pulled as consultants, advisors, at least to the C-suite team. And we are working more and more on operational models, AI, transformation, cybersecurity. So we still do traditional EA, but it's almost as though it's evolved to another layer. And I think the challenge there is to always understand that EA is a continuous, its own business model is continual because it has to evolve. If you don't understand why you're doing EA, the purpose behind it, and that changes, and you have to refresh your own business model almost on an annual basis, then your EA program is going to be doomed to failure. You need to focus on the business outcomes. Certainly do your traditional, but really keep focusing on, why am I doing EA? What's the value proposition that we bring? What are the outcomes? And be able to demonstrate those and talk about those.
Jean, I want to react to what you're saying here because that's something I've seen as well as far as the pitfalls on some of the EA practices, is that there's a big energy to set them up, and then they kind of stagnate because they didn't ask that question as they keep moving forward of, how am I keeping what I've done pertinent, fresh,
Yeah.
reliable. So it's not just, okay, I made an inventory and okay, all done. It's like, I need to first have a system in place to maintain that, and that it's going to keep living, that we can celebrate victories together as we're achieving them, and continue to reinvent ourselves and evolve, because the world keeps evolving, our organizations evolve with them. So EA is there to accompany that change.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Quick tip on challenges. What are the other challenges? Is not only to keep your EA organization fresh, but to celebrate. We are not taking the people time. We're not looking at the people part of EA enough and celebrating wins and communicating those wins out.
Yeah.
Because we're always moving on to the next thing, right?
Very true. To finish up on this section that we're talking about, the value of EA, and resonating back with the remarks that Jean and I have been making. At Mega, we apply an approach, a framework that is also business outcome oriented, step by step, towards being influential. You can't skip steps. You have to go one by one. Everybody starts at the beginning. Unfortunately, sometimes we stay at the beginning a bit longer than we'd like. And that beginning is kind of inevitable, because at first we aren't being heard. We might be working hard, but not being recognized. So I'm happy for you in the audience that so much of you are indicating that you consider that your EA is useful, and that the stakeholders have seen that. But in order to continue to progress in your EA maturity, we continue to reevaluate, like you said, your purpose, Jean, and what are the next use cases? What is the next thing that will be helping the company, the organization, prepare itself for and anticipate change? So being on following the strategy of the organization to address the use cases that are really pertinent for them right then, to continue to be more and more implanted in this web network internally amongst the different departments. So talking about use cases, audience, for you, where you intervene, where you work, where you practice, what are the key use cases that are your top priorities right now? Digital transformation, cost optimization, compliance, IT compliance, security, AI governance, technology innovation and adoption, and or legacy systems modernization. Give you guys just a minute. I'm going to vote too, because Mega has transformations too. So we're going to vote on that. So let's take a look at the answers coming in. I'm looking at this poll screen. Interesting, quite a widespread. A lot of digital transformation, legacy, handling legacy systems modernization. Mega's been around for 30 years, so this is a topic for us too, constantly being moving towards the future, managing our legacy. Very interesting. Digital transformation is really on the top of your votes on the poll. So this brings us into the second theme of our intervention today with Jean. We wanted to talk about how through EA and for a EA practice that is successful, we're connecting the dots across the organization and breaking silos. How the transverse aspect of EA is part of its power. Two critical success factors that we identified on that. One is bringing visibility on this enterprise architecture environment, that we can see the relationships between the business, service components, technical aspects, and that then this is allowing kind of to leverage the interconnectivity that you're exposing. And the second aspect is the more we're wanting to branch out and involve stakeholders in different departments, delegating also the ownership behind information that's key for us, such as the business lead, the technical lead, the risk department, data office. These different parties and stakeholders we're bringing in will, if we need to manage a bit this repository that we're sharing, got to do housekeeping, got to keep it under control so that it is quality, relevant, up to date, complete. So that isn't improvised. You do have a little bit of control on that. But Jean, in your opinion, what are the lesser known success factors related to these? Can you tell us more about what you mean when you and I were talking the other day about collaborative architecture governance? And then I think that you were mentioning also about how we can achieve this interconnectivity inside of the organizations.
So when we were talking about collaborative governance, to me, I call that future fit, because 2007, I stood at my first enterprise architecture governance program. And I've been it was kind of like, I don't know, a recipe. And so I just sort of built on that over the years. But governance for enterprise architecture practice, it starts out traditional. You are really controlling the landscape. You're all about getting it documented, getting tools, getting it documented, and controlling that landscape. And then you kind of moved, into modern, where you've got your architecture review board and you're looking, you have the visibility, often a 360-degree visibility across your landscape, and you're going into some business capabilities. So you can really review investment decisions or change management decisions. And I've seen that's where you get your executive team on those boards so that they're more engaged and they see, okay, visually, here's an impact coming in. It's going to cost this much. This is going to be the fallout for that. So that's in my thing is modern, and that's kind of the target where most companies are residing. But now I'm seeing and trying to promote what I call future fit, which is kind of a hybrid. You still have the traditional, you still have the modern, and it's focused more on continually enhancing that ecosystem. And the reason is because you need to have delivery through customer journeys, value streams, even life cycle streams. And I think that's where what I call collaborative governance comes in. You're doing the guardrails. You've got that. You understand your landscape and you can control it, just visually, if nothing else, by seeing what's going on and then raising those guidelines, et cetera. But I think it's more now about future fit. And that's where AI comes in, transformation. I mean, I'm doing a lot of research right now on the governance of AI data. How are we integrating that into architecture governance? Because EA should be driving, or at least consulting and advising on how AI is coming in, being selected and being used within the company. So I see that's kind of how I see the evolution of governance.
Okay. Our time is running a little short, so we can get on to our next themes. I'm going to accelerate a tiny bit, Jean. I know we had more to say about that last theme, but it's okay. This also I want to just touch a word on something that resonates back with Luca's introduction speech today, and that is connected to what we were just talking about, connecting the dots. Okay, because business transformation is not going to work in silos. If we want to modernize the operating model, we first have to master it. And we need to understand the technologies that allow it to operate. And who says technology says new data governance. Finally, who says transformation says operational risk. So the architect is there to connect these dots, and you're the one that makes the link between IT and business. And that's what's going to also go back and generate that value that we were talking about with EA. And it lets you allow everyone to understand in the organization, anticipate the impact that changes will have on the rest of the company. Chat, your answers, audience. What do you think are the required skills to succeed as an enterprise architect, or for an enterprise architecture practice to succeed? You can start piling them in, and Jean and I will start talking about what we've seen and what we've observed. This is our last theme. Our last theme is about the skills, some that are known, recognized for enterprise architecture to be a success, and some that we consider less developed, maybe sometimes lesser known. One of those is what I was just mentioning about the connected EA, which is when you are getting that, how can I say, vision, the connected vision. So a hard skill would be, you understand, if you're going to work in EA, you understand how generally how IT works, how a technical and application architecture and your sector. But to really have EA success, you need to be able to manage human dynamics and also get that big picture view that's going to come from looking at the full system, having a holistic approach. So did you want to touch on a couple of those particular lesser known skills, maybe, Jean?
So shout out to Steve Boyd, because he just mentioned storytelling. Thumbs up, Steve. So superpowers. I always consider the soft skills of an architect have like 4 superpowers, and superpowers are the superheroes of soft skills that help you level up your architecture game. There's openness. So you've got to deal with challenges. You need to be able to express your views without fear, and embrace some exposure, right? Mm-hmm. There's values. Elvis Presley once said that values are like fingerprints. Nobody's got the same ones, but we all leave our marks, right? So mm-hmm. Your values need to be present and communicated, especially like example, on a project team, you're going to choose people, probably if you have the opportunity, that have values similar to yours, because they're going to align with what your goals are and how you work, et cetera, et cetera. Resilience is huge. It's a real shift in mindset. I think that architects need to be resilient to be successful. They have to reframe challenges to opportunities, right? Mm. That's a mindset that we haven't been taught anywhere. And story stewardship, again, back to Steve Boyd. Story stewardship is really, really important in my opinion, because you're safeguarding that story's outcome. You're kind of the keeper of that original content, and you've got to translate that and tailor it to other audiences, right? So that it becomes more resonant to those groups. But storytelling is huge. So I have a little ebook that's coming out soon, and it's all about superpowers, openness, values, resilience, and storytelling. And I think the soft skills side will probably be a huge focus for architects that are driving their career forward, because those are soft skills, and we're not taught those in IT land. We're taught hard skills.
Yeah, I really love this topic, and I am so disappointed we can't talk more about it. I invite everyone to come back to these slides afterwards and look more into that and continue this discussion outside of the conference, but we have to move forward. Thank you so much again, Jean, for being here with me. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I'll see you soon.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a great conference. This has been fun.
Thank you.